Hey folks, it's Patriot Nurse. Thank you for joining me today. In this segment, we are going to discuss the weapons of their warfare, how governments and various different institutions are weaponizing health choices to weed out different groups of people and ultimately to victimize people who are free thinkers. So when it comes right down to it, friends, there are two mechanisms that are in use right now that you're seeing that are as old as warfare itself. Before we get into these mechanisms and how we effectively resist them in order to keep our principles and live our principles more effectively, I want to tell you all thank you so much, because since I made the last video, the video about essentially real talk on choices and standing on our principles when confronted with roll up your sleeve or else, the new papers. You guys shared that video like crazy, and I want to thank you for it because good people from all over the world contacted me. Good people from all over the world were encouraged. The channel grew incredibly. All glory to God on that. And I'm very, very grateful for it. So thank you for sharing these videos, and I appreciate you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Patriot Nurse, and my background is obviously as a nurse. I've worked in various different specialties. I've worked in inpatient psychiatric, I've worked labor and delivery, home health is an aspect thereof, med surg, high risk labor and delivery, and then also ER and trauma. So my background is pretty diverse as far as nursing goes, but a lot of nurses out there, like me, have been put in situations where we've had to make choices. And it's not just those of you who are nurses. There are people in various different situations who are being confronted right now with very difficult choices. And I want to give you some options. I want to talk about exemptions. But before I get into that, I want you to understand the nature of the warfare against us. So first off, I would submit to you that what you're seeing here and what you have been seeing as far as the mobilization of roll up your sleeve pressure or else, this is something that is, in my opinion, primarily getting its strength in the spiritual realm. Because if you take a look at who these people are who are involved in research in these things, they are people who A, do not fear God, B, do not believe that there's a God in many cases, and C, do not acknowledge an objective right and wrong for human and moralistic behavior. They are secular humanists at best who really have contributed over the course of several decades to some research that has a lot of bioethical quandaries, including the use of cell lines that have been isolated from very bad places. Because of the format and the platform on which I'm coming to you, I can't delve too deeply into that because of censorship reasons. So understand that these people who are involved in pushing this, the ones at the top are very bad people. They're not good people. The people in the middle are the useful idiots. They are the lackeys. They are the glove on the iron fist of totalitarianism. They are the cannon fodder from centuries back. A lot of these people are well-meaning, but they are sorely deceived and or ignorant and or sold out to the party narrative. So what you have to understand here is that this next phase of how they're going to attempt to intimidate people who want to stand on their principles and who, for whatever reason, it doesn't matter whatever reason it is, who want to maintain sovereignty over their bodies and their health choices, and who maintain that any health intervention has to have informed consent, consent being the backbone of that phrase. And so for that reason, I want to go over basically the tools that they have in their toolbox. There's two of them, and I've spoken about this in depth in my newsletter. The first is the denial of essential goods and services, and the second is overt force and violence. So understand that these mechanisms, even though they have seemingly new application, these mechanisms and the flow energetically is as old as warfare itself. The first, in denial of essential goods and services, meaning roll up your sleeve or you can't go here and purchase X, roll up your sleeve or you're not allowed to participate in service X, roll up your sleeve or you're not allowed to go here, here, or here. This is essentially siege warfare, okay? If you were to apply this flow to back in the day, the goal is to starve you out. The goal is to get you by fear or by dependency to bow to them and to do what they say or else. So the way that this is practically walking out here in the United States is that the Biden administration is soliciting the help of large corporations and a very fascistic mechanism to enforce the policies that it would not be constitutional for them to implement via a governmental mechanism. So what they're doing is getting corporate America on board and also, mid-level corporations to enforce policies that are not constitutional if they came from the government itself. So it's incredibly fascistic. It's the way of things. It's who they are, and I'm not surprised by it. The reason why they are successful in doing so is because many people are not in a position where they are self-sufficient enough to provide their own services or to be educated enough to not need them outside of that grid. So we see, for instance, that people are being turned away in cases I know of, 100% of primary care providers services. They're being denied healthcare services because of a refusal to implement certain healthcare policies, shall we say. And without going down the rabbit trail as to how incredibly illogical this is and how the left keeps pushing at it, I want you to understand that the reason why this is being used right now is because it's a frontline assault. The denial of goods and services is a passive way of getting people to capitulate without kicking doors in. Okay? Door kicking doesn't come in till later. They'll use the carrot first. The carrot has not worked. Do you see the carrot and the stick here? The carrot is, we'll give you $100. You'll be entered into a raffle if you roll up your sleeve. We'll give you X, Y, or Z. The carrot, right? Be good and mommy will give you a cookie. The carrot is being used. The carrot is being phased out right now because it's not been effective. So now they're doing a soft stick, and the soft stick is you have until October or September or whatever to capitulate in receiving a jab or else. And in doing so, a lot of people have contacted me to ask, like, how do exemptions work? So before I get into the overt force and violence portion, I do want to speak about exemptions. In my own professional career, the way that I have done this is as follows, and I will share with you my story because I cannot give you legal advice when it comes to these things because, particularly in the United States, this is a state-by-state governance issue. Health requirements, etc., due to 10th Amendment issues and others are the purview of the states, even though they're the people, but the laws governing these things are state-by-state. So, for instance, Texas will not have the same as Vermont, as New York, as Tennessee, as Florida, as Nebraska. It's not going to be the same state to state. In my own personal experience, the way that this has worked is when I have gone for request of exemptions for the big V, it is manifested as follows. I go to Human Resources and ask very boringly and plainly, I need a religious exemption or a faith-based exemption more appropriately for the big V. And I'm very boring about it. There's no reason to make it a huge scene. There's no reason to do a mic drop moment if you don't have to. You very boringly ask for the exemption, the faith-based exemption. And there are various different templates that are out there. In my experience, the less that I have said, the better when it comes straight to, because this is not, I don't have anything to hide. I'm not manufacturing things. I have a very sincerely held faith-based belief that receiving these is not compatible with my belief system at all. So for me, it's not a lie and there's nothing to hide. My faith compels me to request an exemption because I will not be capitulating to this. So when you go and you request an exemption, being boring about it and filling it out that way, in my experience, that's worked very well. Now again, this is a state-by-state issue. And I've spoken about this in my newsletter on Patreon for those of you who are interested in more. Because of the limitations of this video, I can't go over everything with you. But nvic.org is a good one. I'll try and put a few links in the description box below. But I talked about this in some depth in my newsletter this month for my $5 and above Patreon supporters. So long story short, there are faith-based exemptions out there. It really just depends on how you are, how the individual situation is, and what your state governance is, and basically how problematic your particularly nurses, how problematic the nurses unions are, and teachers unions are another one. They are basically an enclave of Democrat and leftist strongholds, so you can expect that they're going to enforce what the Politburo tells them to, and they're going to walk lockstep in it. Not a dissenting vote, imagine that. So we spoke about denial of essential goods and services being a necessary part of their warfare and the implementation of their agenda. The tactics with which they're going to accomplish this is basically, I think, going to walk out insofar as people are going to be denied, obviously, working with different companies. People are going to be denied essential services. They may, for instance, in New York, when you look at this passport, people are looking at being denied ability to freely move and go to different places, etc. But this is more mild and mundane. I do not think ultimately that this is going to work if we stand strong on things. If people stand with conviction on their principles, it's going to be very difficult for them to effectively conduct siege warfare on us. And part of this is that a lot of people have been following the advice of people and YouTubers, influencers, etc., like myself and like many others who've been advocating for have X number of months worth of food stored up. Be self-sufficient in different things. Whatever you own, if they can't take it from you, they have nothing to threaten you with. If you are self-sufficient, what are they going to do? Oh, you're going to deny me the ability to go to the grocery store? Big whoop, I've got 6 months of food stored up, for instance. So your ability to withstand part one of their tactics depends on your faith, depends on your practical preparedness, and it also depends on your ability to stand together as a community. And I spoke about this in my newsletter with regards to being in a position of mutual support. When you have people who are like-minded and who are sharing a similar conviction, it is much more difficult for an external group to put pressure on them when they can mutually meet each other's needs. So this definitely has a biblical precedent in it as well. The second point here I want to go over is overt force and violence to scare and intimidate people into capitulation and to violating their conscience. And so basically when all other options have been used up, the force tactics, the more draconian measures, they come in. The question is whether or not we're going to see them here in the United States. I think we have been seeing them in many ways in a soft mechanism, particularly via family court and via CPS. And so when you do a little bit of research into the ways that retaliation of force has been happening here in the United States, it has started in the family courts, wherein nurses and doctors and people who are in some kind of position of power and authority either A, abuse their power and authority to get the state involved and take children away from their parents, or B, they are sincerely deceived and they truly believe that they are doing the best thing possible by getting the state involved to rescue children from parents who, because they don't walk lockstep with whatever alphabet soup organization's dictates are, that they're therefore bad parents. And so I've seen this in my own life, and I know, having seen it walked out, that it can happen, that parents have had different organizations, different, particularly healthcare providers, ne'er-do-well neighbors, people basically inform on them. That's the next step of this. So again, this goes back to, are you going to have control over your territory? Are you going to have control over the mitigatable risk factors in your life? And when it comes right down to it, having control over your children's education is paramount. And I spoke about this in the newsletter in depth, but homeschooling, if you have any ability to do this, you have a much better chance of being able to control the factors that are being externally placed into your children's life and wedges in between you and your family. And obviously self-sufficiency as regards your own personal preparedness and your security is paramount. I mean, I've said this before and I'll say it again. Everywhere I go armed. Like every night before I go to sleep, there's 10 rifle presentations and a prayer. Like this is how I roll. This is my everyday structure of my life. People might say, oh, it's extreme. No, if there's anything that we have seen in the past few years, it's that by the time that you realize your need to prepare, it's too freaking late. It is. The people who wait until the threat is upon them to, oh, maybe I should, it's too late. When you are operating from a position of faith coupled with preparedness and mutual support as a community, your strength to withstand wickedness when it comes to you is amplified to a degree that people around you can't understand in the lead up to it. But when it's upon them, they look at you as a leader. Because it's your faith with wisdom and action that sets you apart, that sets people apart right now for leadership. And in the days that are going to be coming upon us that are already here, marrying together faith with action is critical for us to be able to keep what is rightfully ours, to live our principles, to operate in freedom, and ultimately live the life that we want to our highest potential. I don't want to look myself in the mirror 10, 20, 30 years from now and think, man, I caved. I caved because I was weak in character. I caved because I just didn't prepare. The point in preparedness, and I've been saying this for years, friends, the point in preparedness and having things stored up and meeting needs is not so we can sit on our little stockpile and watch the world burn around us. The point is that we prepare, we have strength that undergirds it so we can be a lighthouse in times of darkness. People are afraid right now. They're afraid. They're afraid because of dependency. They're afraid because they lack spiritual strength. They're afraid because basically the world looks big around them and they feel small and tiny in it. But if you're coming from a place of, the Hebrew word is koach. If you're coming from a koach, a strength that comes from deep within, and you recognize that your destiny is set by the Almighty, who created everything, what can man do to you? The soul that you have is a spark from the divine, and no man can destroy it. If he can't destroy it, why would I let him mar it by forcing me into some kind of false dichotomy of choose this or else, bow down or else? No. There's a shirt that I have that's below, I bow to no man and only one God. I got links to it somewhere down there. You can find it. But that is very true. For people who want to live by faith, we don't bow to a man. I don't bow to the dictates of a government. My trust and faith is in the Lord God Almighty, the creator of heaven and earth. And if someone is telling me, I don't care what badge they wear, I don't care if they think that they pay my bills, he is the one whom I will serve. His law alone will I listen to. And whenever there is a conflict, particularly a conflict with my conscience and my understanding of how he wants me to live my life, I know whose side to take. So being prepared with these things and understanding the weapons of their warfare allows us to better take hold of our own. And in the days to come, I think we're going to need it. Building up spiritual strength, going before the Lord in prayer and in fasting, and really seeking to be a blessing in our communities in the midst of it all. He will give us strength. He will give us light for our steps. He's already given us a destiny, a plan, and a hope and a future. I want to live authentically, and I know you do too. You are here watching this video to the point that you're at right now because you want better for your children, for your future. You want to live an authentic life, and you want to live a life that is undergirded by principles. And our principles and our good names, basically all we've got in this life. Why in the world would I let some man, some human being, some person with a badge, some person why in the world would I let them steal that from me? For what? The cost of a little bit of inconvenience? For the cost of the chagrin of the public and the ostracization of Facebook friends? Whatever. Life is bigger than that. People are wasting away for lack of meaning. We have all this stuff, all this material blah, and people are still lonely and empty and agonizing over not having a place in this world. Because ultimately, every person in the deep parts of their heart knows that life is about being, not having. Being things. A spiritual strength. Being spiritual things. Not having stuff. Stuff is nice. Having is more important in many people's minds than being. And that's why they're in the position they're in right now. A portion of testing and of stretching. What do I really value? Hitherto this point, many of us have valued having things rather than being. And now when you're faced down with principles, being versus having, which one will we choose? I hope that was helpful for you all today. If you did enjoy the video, I hope you'll subscribe to me here on YouTube, Patriot Nurse. You can stay with me on Patreon, subscribe, start, and support me on cryptocurrency, PayPal. Also, friends, you need to get trained. I don't care if you train with me. You need to get trained in being able to take care of your family's needs at home. Part of being flint-faced in the midst of opposition and in the midst of people conducting siege warfare on your life is being able to say, no thanks, I can meet my needs myself. I don't need you. And being self-sufficient, particularly in caring for sick family members at home, that's what I want to help you be able to do. You got a few options if you want to train with me. 4 hours online is $129. Links down below. Also, you can train with me live events. I've got Indianapolis that's coming up in a couple of weeks, and then also be in Salt Lake City. Added a Dallas class in December, actually. And then I think I'm going a couple more places. You can find the schedule at the website, thepatriotnurse.com. I don't care whether you train with me or somebody else, but you need to get self-sufficient in this, because in my opinion, these tactics that they're implementing now, they're going to be ratcheting the pressure up here pretty soon. I hope it was helpful for y'all. Have a very blessed weekend. For now, it's Patriot Nurse signing off, and I'll see y'all later. Bye.